Welcome. It can be challenging to try to discover the essential nature of what this is. Largely because the places to look consist of what we're already so familiar with: our ordinary experience, our lives, our friends, the world, our sleep, our dreams, all of this experience that we are so familiar with. And the biggest challenge is that we already think we know what that is. We think we know what the world is. We think we know what we are. We think we know what people are. We think we know what life is. We think we know what sleep is. Of course, we don't really know in detail. If we look really closely, we kind of admit, well, we don't really know what atoms are. We don't really know what energy is. We don't really know what consciousness is. But it's easy to kind of slough that stuff off and, well, yeah, but it's consciousness. There's consciousness here. There's the world, there's bodies, there's, life, there's time, there's space, there's causality, there's all these things that we can kind of assume we sort of have a handle on, even if we don't ever actually look too closely and notice that we don't actually. But this general feeling of knowing, this general feeling of having a handle on things, turns out to be our biggest challenge, turns out to be our biggest impediment from a spiritual point of view. Because, of course, if you already know, you're not going to look further, you're not going to question, you're going to settle you're going to stay with where you are, because that's how it is. It's true, it's objectively true, it's the facts, it's the case, it's what's going on. So, and if someone says, well, but maybe it's not, it's easy to hold that idea intellectually. It's easy to say, well, yeah, maybe it's not. Let me think about that. But our gut feeling is, no, I know what's going on. I know what this is. I know what I am. I know what the world is. Because we have a feeling that we know what it is objectively. We have a feeling of a kind of a certainty that locks us into a kind of a dullness of not questioning, of not considering that maybe it's radically different than we think in some way that still looks like what we're used to seeing, but that's too weird, that's too strange, and we can't let ourselves go there, because above all it's just a lot of work, and it counters the certainty and the dullness of our sense of things, our sense of what's true, what's real, what's objectively true, what's going on, In a lot of different spiritual traditions, traditional ones and relatively new ones that teachers are suggesting, there tends to be, or there often is, a kind of a buzzword or a practice or a central issue that is the focus. Advaita has awareness. Who's asking the question? Devotional practices have devotion. Tantric practices have Shaktipat, you go to the great master and he gives you the voodoo and you go, oh, and you're getting some spiritual improvement out of the deal. And all that's fine as far as it goes. But the problem is that ultimately reality is inclusive. Reality includes everything. Reality includes normalcy. Reality includes dullness. Reality includes stupidity. I mean, look around you. Reality includes everything that we're used to encountering during the course of our day. And what about all of that? Where's that in the devotion? Where's that in the Shaktipat? Where's that in the who's asking the question? And so try to leave people with just this present event. And that's challenging. It's challenging mainly because, as I said, we already have a gut feeling that we know what it is, and usually held unconsciously, so it's hard to challenge. It's harder to investigate that. But ultimately, I think that's the honest and comprehensive way to come to reality. You have to find reality in everything. If you're dependent upon getting the Shakti Pad or getting the divine love or getting the this or getting the that, then you're kind of a junkie. Then you have to keep getting hooked up with your connection, you know. Whereas your actual connection with reality is this, your moment-to-moment experience. This is real. This is actuality. And if there is a spiritual reality to be revealed, this is what's revealing it. It has to be. If it's real, it has to be in all of reality. And we certainly know our experience is real. It's actually happening. I mean, you know, we're experiencing it. But again, this can be challenging because it's kind of open-ended. It doesn't give you a nice little buzzword to fasten onto. It doesn't give you a nice little practice to go do. You know, you got to do your 20 minutes, say your TM mantra for 20 minutes a day, you know, morning and evening, or do the this or do the that. That gives you something to sort of latch onto. It's like, that's the ladder I'm climbing, you know. As long as I do that, everything's going to be all right. But it turns out that there is a supremely powerful facet of reality that is available to us, that reveals itself to us, and that will immediately bootstrap you into essentially divine awareness, which sounds pretty pretentious, but it's actually pretty specifically true. And that is energy. Now, what do I mean by energy? You know, physicists talk about energy. They have all sorts of equations about energy and force and doing work and all this stuff. I'm not talking about energy in those kind of formal terms. I'm talking about energy as the forcefulness, the radiance, the positivity that everything is made of. And by everything, I mean your experience, because, of course, your experience is everything, right? You don't know anything outside of your experience. And if you look at your experience, you can notice that it has an energy, it has a sizzle, it appears. Things appear unbidden. You don't need to go out to light and force it to show up in your field of vision, do you? It shines forth, it jumps forth actively, dynamically into your sight. Thoughts, you don't have to sit there and conjure up a thought. On the contrary, thoughts are just leaping forth unbidden. So there's a dynamism, there's a radiance, there's an energetic quality that experience itself shows up as. We're aware of this in the flow of time, you know, just the sense that, you know, the present moment keeps happening. It's an unstoppable event. You know, there's a sense of a sort of energetic quality there, a sense of a certain, you know, positivity, a certain, you know, momentum there of some kind that is, you know, subtle and not necessarily obvious. And in our awareness, consciousness is not just a passive thing that's just sort of sitting there like a lump of Play-Doh or something, you know. It's dynamic, it's looking, it's engaging, it's spontaneously going to experience. You know, even in your sleep, it goes to dreams. You know, it just engages, it reaches out. And that's an energetic quality there too. It's a positivity, it is a dynamism, it is an inherent energeticness, you know. So I'm using this word energy, this idea energy, to try to encompass this aspect of things. And this is inherent in everything, in every aspect of experience, in every aspect of reality. There is this positive presence, this dynamic putting forth, where event happens, light shines, gravity pulls, consciousness engages, thoughts pop up. All of these things are happening unstoppably, and it's not like they require effort. They have an energy behind them. They have a momentum behind them. It's like there's a wellspring of forcefulness that is somehow shooting forth, shining forth all of these qualities that show up as every aspect of our experience. And this is not an abstract thing. It may sound kind of abstract to try to talk about it. Certainly the words are abstractions, the ideas are abstractions. But if you look at your experience, this is actually here, this is actually present, this is concrete. Your experience is very concrete, no? And all the phenomena within your experience, right here, right now, are forcefully present, are dynamically present. They have a sizzle to them. They have an eventfulness that is inherent in what they are. You don't need to go out to them and coax them to show up to be doing something. On the contrary, you can't stop them. You can't stop the present moment. You can't stop things from showing up. You can't stop thoughts from popping up. You can't stop, visions from appearing in your sense of vision and so on. Every aspect, all the dimensions of your experience are all working in this exact same mode of just this dynamic shining forth of qualities, all sorts of qualities. And of course we can qualify these qualities all sorts of ways. We qualify them in terms of physical phenomena, in terms of mental phenomena, in terms of the five senses or the six senses if you include thought. You can qualify them in terms of subtle energies. You can qualify them in terms of moods, in terms of inspirations, in terms of, we have all these different ways of qualifying them. But if you look closely, all of these different modes, different ranges of our experience share this same liveliness, this same bursting forth irrepressibly. And you likewise, in the sense of your consciousness or your awareness, is also bursting forth. It's always present. It's just here. You don't need to muster it up. You don't need to force together some consciousness or some awareness. It's just poof. It's just here. It's just spontaneously here. Now, the point I'm making is that this dynamism, this energetic quality, is real. It's actual. It is the force that is doing everything. You remember, of course, Luke Skywalker, feel the force, Luke. This is the force we're talking about. It's the real thing. It's not the Hollywood version. This is the actual forcefulness. In different spiritual traditions, they have a lot of technical words for it. But all of that's irrelevant, because the point isn't to have theories. The point isn't to learn philosophy. The point is to notice that this is a reality that is actually present. And in noticing its reality in your experience right here, right now, just the presence, the forceful presence of all phenomena within your experience, and your experience itself, constantly, dynamically. It's always refreshing itself. It's always shining forth. It's always present. But it's not a static presence. It's a dynamic presence. It's a presence that's continually refreshing itself in every way. This is the force. This is the very force. This is the divine force. If you want to get grandiose about it, this is the force of reality itself. And it's not a little thing, and it's not just an accident of description or an accident of philosophy or of a poetic reference, a metaphor. This is the real thing. This forcefulness, this energy that is inherent in experience is the divine force, is the force of reality. It's the force of creation. It's the force of the Big Bang. And this force is what you are. You are this force. And of course you know this because you feel this force always 24/7. It's always here. It's easy to not notice it and to take it for granted because, again, it shows up cloaked in all of this phenomena, all this readout, all the amazing things that are going on in the world and in your mind and, in our experience. But this force is obvious, it's completely accessible, it's completely intimate because it is in you. It is you. You are this force. And not only you are this force, but the world is this force. The universe is this force. Consciousness is this force. And if you wanted to sum it all up and call it God or call it the Absolute or call it, whatever you want, that is this force. So this force is absolutely absolute. It's absolutely transcendental. And yet it's completely accessible because it's always right here, right now. It's always the very lifeblood of your experience, the very dynamism of your experience. And so this is something you can notice. And it's probably pretty esoteric. In case you happen to have read any Kashmir Shaivism, this principle in Kashmir Shaivism is considered the root principle, and they call it spanda, which is a Sanskrit word which means this force, this I believe this literally translates as pulsation or something. But spanda, as a Sanskrit word, is the root of our word expand, of our word spandex. You can trace it to several other words, but so this principle of just sort of poof, but in Kashmir Shaivism, this is the divine force, in capital letters, like bow down and burn candles and sacrifice virgins and the whole deal. This was a big deal. And in Kashmir Shaivism, they recommend the spiritual path is very easy. Just notice this force, feel it, and see how absolutely profound it is, how it undercuts and informs everything. It undercuts and informs your very being, and as well as all events that shows up in your experience. So they say that, and I'm reiterating that here. I agree with them. I say, yeah, you want a short path, you want a really simple method. Just get a sense of this dynamism. This is simple dynamism. Any dynamism that shows up in your experience is this dynamism, because it's the dynamism, the spontaneity with which event is showing up in your experience, with which light seems to shine, sound seems to vibrate, consciousness seems to perceive and be present and engage. All of these things spontaneously happen, and this spontaneity, this forceful spontaneity that you can't shut off, you can't stop it. I mean, so far from you don't need to do it, on the contrary, you can't stop it, you can't undo it, there's no off switch. So there's this unstoppable shining forth of everything on every level within your experience. And this forcefulness is inherent. Its roots are at the very core of things, at the very basis of reality itself. And so just feeling this force, feeling, you can meditate on it, you can feel it, you can rest in it, you can think about it doesn't really matter. But just feel this dynamism of this presence of the present moment that is dynamically and unstoppably refreshing itself. And it goes to the very core of reality, the very core of what this is. It goes to the very essence of things. It goes to, in Hindu terms, it goes to the Atman. It goes to Shiva Shakti. It goes to, the Holy Ghost. It goes to, all these different traditions have different names for this forcefulness, this radiance that suffuses and affects everything. But all of that is very abstract and grandiose, but the advantage for us is that it's right here in your experience. Your very experience right now, just the very presence and shining forth of phenomena in your experience is nothing whatsoever other than this absolutely radical, absolutely transcendental force. And so just sort of feeling that, just intuiting that, just touching that, just being with that is an absolutely profound and ultimately transforming meditation or practice or noticing or just whatever. And the point isn't to formalize it. The point is that the reality of the thing is what matters, not how you call it, not putting it in fancy names or getting all excited about it or wearing funny clothes and having silly handshakes and learning foreign languages. It's really just about this actuality that is always present in your experience. And that means it's accessible. That means it is powerful. That means you can actually engage with it and notice it at any time without needing to engage in a lot of self-importance and a lot of exaggerated spiritual mumbo-jumbo. Because this is real. This is real. It's real with a capital R. Anyway, that's my talk for tonight. And if anyone would like to have a little chat, we have a microphone if you wouldn't mind speaking into that. That way people who are following on the internet will be able to hear what you have to say. And if we're not talking, or if you're not talking, or at any time, I suggest just feel the dynamism of this presence, of just sitting here, being in this space, hanging out, hearing the words or ignoring them or whatever it is you're doing, getting distracted, whatever, and just feel that this constant sort of subtle but absolutely profound and absolutely universal presence, this energeticness that's just inherent in experience itself, in being itself.
I was just going to say, it's interesting that they've just awarded the Nobel Prize for someone who scientifically was able to show how this movement is constantly expanding at
really?
a particular rate.
Huh.
I forget what it was. That it's just the universe is expanding, and as opposed to when they thought that it was actually going to contract. But it's just going to keep going.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
So that's also that movement, or that...
I gladly accept the Nobel Prize. Thank you so much. I'm honored. I guess I better finish high school, right?
So this energy that you're talking about, it's also impulsing. It's like it's a movement. It's moving.
Yeah.
But then you talked about the core as if the movement is coming from something.
Well, yeah, I mean, all movement is this movement. This movement is the forcefulness behind all movement, and everything, of course, is movement. Concretely within our experience, just the change of the flow of time and the change of events and what you're seeing and what you're thinking and all that is constantly refreshing itself, right? And it's a shining force. It seems to be coming from somewhere, but you can't find. It's not aware that it's coming from, like, oh, it's coming from over there. It's coming from over there. It's coming from over there. It's coming from in here. It's not like that, is it? But still, it's shining forth anyway. Where it comes from is the absolute. It comes from itself. It comes from, it doesn't make sense in simplistic rational terms, in terms of, oh, it's shining from, that corner of the room up there. It's not like that. It's not something that you can get a handle on in simple terms, or, oh, it's shining from the 7th chakra, which is located, exactly 8 3/4 inches above your, It's not like that. It's mysterious. in a logical sense. It's mysterious when you try and get analytical with it, but it is self-evident and self-revealing when you just look and see the simple evidence of your experience that, oh yeah, everything has a dynamism, everything has a liveliness. Time and tide stop for no man. This is this unstoppable force. This breaking wave that all phenomena consist of, that basically just means our experience, because of course you can't find anything outside your experience. And where's it coming from? Yeah, it's an interesting question. The idea that, if it's shining forth, it has to be coming from somewhere. Well, maybe, but it's not simple like that, is it? You can't find a place that it's not. You can't find a place that is not shining. You can't find a place that is not energetic. And you can't find a direction that it's going. It seems to be going in every direction at once. And so you can't really find where it's coming from, where it's going to, if those notions are even relevant. But that fact alone is transcendental. It takes you out of seeing things in a simplistic way, trying to find a localization of where am I, where is the center of reality, where is God, where is heaven, these kinds of notions that are they're simplistic questions assuming a simplistic answer. And the answer the reality presents to us is not simplistic, it's subtle. What this actually is subtle. It doesn't lend itself to these simple human models of location and meaningfulness and so on and so forth. But nonetheless, it's real. It is as it is. And if we let go of our preconceptions of what we expect it to be, we can look at what it actually is, and that's where we find reality. Reality doesn't necessarily conform to our expectations of what it's going to be, obviously. It is what it is, and it's up to us to see what it is and adjust our expectations accordingly, not the other way around.
So what do you think is going on when people talk about coming to a stillness and a silence?
I think it's largely fantasy. There is profound stillness and silence, but even in stillness and silence, you'll find this dynamism. You never find eventlessness. Time never stops. Thought never stops. Light never stops shining. You can say, I can go in my experience and find a place that I could call a still center, but if I get really honest and look at it really close, is it really still and is it really a center? Well, it's something else entirely. It's subtle. But it's not still. There's no such thing as stillness. Stillness is a fantasy. Because this universal energy, this universal dynamism, is ubiquitous. It's everywhere, in everything. You cannot find a place where it's not. You cannot find absolute zero. You cannot find a total vacuum. You cannot find complete thought-freeness. There's always at least a subtle energetic quality. And people, in spiritual circles, it's, I want peace, I want quiet, I want, peace from the travails of life and the struggles of, and all that's very nice. It's a wonderful fantasy. But is life really a struggle? Maybe life is peace. Is the wave not at peace? The wave is just moving along, obeying the laws of physics. It's at perfect equilibrium, perfect dynamic equilibrium at all times. It's never out of balance even the tiniest bit. Is it immobile? Well, it's not, is it? But is anything immobile? Is there such a thing as immobility? Even consciousness, this supposed consciousness, if we could find a background consciousness, it would be this perfect, still screen of velvety blackness that wasn't doing anything. But that's not true, is it? Even if you look at consciousness, you can get as subtle as you want, and there's still a little sizzle there, isn't it? There's still a little dynamism, there's a little focusing, there's a little zooming around, there's a little, shimmying. But look for yourself. Look for yourself. Maybe you can find some stillness. I've never found it. But I've never found anything out of balance either. I've never found anything out of equilibrium. So all of this craziness isn't actually craziness. It's like perfect wave fronts breaking in perfect accordance with law, in perfect accordance with physics.
Peter, we have a question from the internet, and I'm actually going to paraphrase it slightly, but do you feel that people have lost themselves? It seems that people are very lost these days.
I don't know. I don't think people are any more or less lost than they ever were. And I think that's an individual basis. I think some people are more lost than other people, maybe. But what does lost themselves mean? Have people ever found themselves? Is there anyone to find? What do you find when you find yourself? And I think, and that's not just facetious, that's actually a very good question. What do you find when you find yourself? I mean, this is really what I'm talking about with all of this talk about energy, talk about radiance, talk about this astounding shining forth that is omnipresent as our experience. Maybe that's what we are. Maybe we are a shining forth. Maybe we're like a star shining in the middle of infinite space in the universe, just blaring out light forever. I think in conceptual terms there's a whole lot of misinformation floating around about what things are, what people are, what anything is. But I don't think there's anything new there in terms of the human situation, near as I can tell.
Just some random thoughts, not a question per se, but when you were talking about stillness, and when I was first hearing the little intro speech, it came to me to sense into this energy that somehow in my mind, not just in my mind, but in the experience, is to be still, quote unquote, using that term as a descriptive term, to be still, because we're usually so used to perceiving or conceptualizing really what we perceive so automatically that to tune back into this ever so subtle field of suchness, that using words, I would say, one needs to be still. So in that sense, I don't see contradiction of being still, and then you say, oh, nothing is really still, because it's really just looking at it from two angles, to be still and then to see that everything is not still, but it's a vibrant type of a stillness that is vibrant.
Yeah. I think what you're talking about I would label as subtlety more than stillness. Because when we begin to tune in, to begin to follow what is here in our experience, the suchness, what is consciousness, what is experience, what is this amazing, ongoing, alive phenomena here, it can take us out of our thought. It can take us out of our more superficial level that we usually hang out in, which can seem a lot like silence, but it isn't really. I mean,
it's just a word which.
And so I think a more appropriate notion is a notion of subtlety, because this energy, this dynamism, this consciousness has modes that are very, very, very subtle, very refined, very delicate, that are if you notice them, if you are with them, so to speak, let's say, language kind of fails, obviously, you may find yourself in a very delicate quality of experience that may seem to be more like a stillness, more like a silence than the usual, when you're being cut off in traffic and being flipped off and calling someone an asshole.
The word silent is really in opposition to the normal, the norm of.
But I think it's more a matter perception. Of degree of subtlety. And I think that if we notice there's endless and infinite degrees of subtlety, and however subtle we go in being with our experience, you can always go more subtle. But it's never really nothing. You never get to a point of absolute zero, of where everything stops, where it's all of a sudden sort of pure blackness or pure nothingness or pure whatever. It's not quite like that. It's always alive. Right. It's always intelligent. It's always profound. It always has juiciness. Again, words fail. We don't really have language for this.
Another thought that also occurred to me was, like, for example, when you're saying everything is, popping up and, coming forth, I was thinking of the sound or thought arising. Those are, to me, much more obviously, these popping up arisings. And those, again, for lack of a better word, are more ephemeral happenings. But then when I was thinking of what we consider solid objects, a body, a chair, the walls, my sense is that one, again, using the word silent or being still, one has to be a lot more subtle to really start to sense the vibrancy in what we typically call solid objects, because I'm thinking of some past, call them glimpses, call them whatever, unusual experiences where the solid object really, quite literally, is shining forth. But in this moment, these walls, the chair, they don't come across like that to me.
But, solid objects are always experiences. Yes. And experiences, the walls seem solid, but they're being seen. So they're sights, they're visions. And so that begs the question, well, when we go to vision, what is vision? What's happening with vision? And vision is this obvious, it's literally a radiance of light. It's a radiation of light. And it has a dynamism. It has you don't see the same light in two consecutive instances. So the supposed wall that is there as a fixed thing, in actual fact, your experience of it is fluctuating enormously. And not just theoretically, but explicitly in your experience. You notice different things. It seems, if you look closely at it, it's actually kind of shimmering. It's not really inert or static. This isn't it's easy to glance at the wall and say, yeah, the wall's solid. But, this is an experiment. You've probably heard me. I often suggest it. Sit in front of a blank wall, preferably lightly colored, but it doesn't really matter, and ideally nicely, brightly lit with lights on it and everything, and just sit there for 5 minutes and look at the blank wall and just try and be still and watch what the experience of looking at the wall is looking like. You will discover that you do not have the same experience in two consecutive instances. This supposedly still wall that is supposedly the same and supposedly not doing anything, in actual fact, it's jumping around and it's moving like this, and the colors are changing and patterns are shifting, and you're noticing this and noticing that, and your attention is jumping around. Try it. This is just, you in fact, you won't be able to stop it. You won't be able to get the wall to slow down.
I can't say that I have experienced things so vibrantly with solid objects.
Have you done that? Have you done that with a wall?
No, but I'll try it in the next 5 minutes.
Yeah, get a blank wall. I mean, as blank as you can get, no pictures or anything, just a little wall, and sit a few feet in front of it, and preferably nicely brightly lit. With, I mean, not like just normal, with a light in the room, on in the room, and just sit quietly, like pretend you're a Zen monk or something, and just. Don't like forcefully stare. Just relax and look at the wall, and look at moment to moment what the actual experience of being with that wall is, and you settle into it. Because the first couple of minutes you'll be jumping around, but settle into it. And just 5 minutes is enough. But go to 10 or 15 or 20 if you really want the full treatment, and you will notice. I guarantee you will notice that it's like trying to look at a bucking bronco. This supposedly solid, still, stable, boring, inert wall will reveal itself as like a hurricane.
Well, I mean, having been to your meetings and having heard your suggestion of doing something like that, I must say that I have never been successful in perceiving it the way you're describing.
Well, try it.
I'll try it. Absolutely.
You got to try. You got to try. You got to actually do it to notice it.
But on the other hand, just from past experience, not of any volition or any volitional inquiry, there had been some occurrences where things did appear that way to me. I remember a tree very clearly, just the way that it's like shining with inner light.
Sure.
But typically,
if you notice, but it is actually always happening, and if you're not noticing
I'm sure
it,
that's
it's that you're not noticing it, not that it's not.
I
guarantee it. Here's another very simple experiment. Stand in a quiet bathroom in front of a mirror with the light on, and don't move at all, and just look at your reflection in the mirror for 5 minutes. Even 1 minute will do it. And your face isn't moving; it's not doing anything. And it's going to be like this. You're going to think someone dosed you with LSD or something in your tea. Try it.
Maybe one needs to be initiated by LSD first.
No, just try it. Just try it. But you have to actually do it. You can't think about it and say, "Oh yeah, okay, if you say so." Just 3 minutes in front of the mirror. That's a 3 minute. You don't even need to go to 5 minutes.
3 minutes and come back.
Go and lay.
I can use this wall right now. I don't have to go anywhere. I mean, is this light enough? This is not light enough. You suggest a light wall.
Okay, but you really
Why not? What's the difference?
Well, you get the best effect if the wall's really plain. This wall wood has texture and stuff, but like a plain white plastered wall that's seemingly blank. Or what's really good? A piece of blank typing paper. That's really good. You don't need a wall.
White cup.
That'll do. But you have to have it absolutely still, and keep your eyes absolutely still, and so there's no movement. It'd be better because it'll move a little bit if you have it in your hand. It'll be better if it's sitting on something, but so that there's no movement in the system. So it's like, okay, everything is still now. And settle with that for about 60 seconds or 120 seconds, and just watch what happens. You do it and tell me what happens. You'll notice that everything's going like this.
I'll see. I can't. I won't take your word for it. But like I said, from past experience, something like that has happened, but it's not reproducible. As in, maybe I'm just not able to easily get to that level of stillness to perceive the subtlety.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's the case. I mean,
sure. Yeah. But anyway, play with it. I suggest you play with it because it's fascinating to discover this.
LSD for free.
That's right. Yeah. Cheap thrills.
I can look at this, right? It's not moving.
Doesn't matter what you look at. You'll find the same thing. Or you can try it with sound. You can try it with the insides of your eyelids. Just close your eyes. You can put your hands on them if you want.
That's always changing. That
Yeah.
the supposed blackness is never
Yes.
black. That's clear. But I was referring more to what we normally call solid objects. The more what I call
But solid objects aren't solid objects. They're objects of vision, and so they partake of the qualities of vision, which is dynamic.
I will experiment right now.
There was that thing with the ping pong ball. You cut the ping pong ball in half. You know about that ping pong ball effect? They call it the Gansfeld effect. I don't know. Maybe he was the guy that tried it first. Cutting a ping pong ball in half, and you put it over each half over one eye, and because I don't know what's supposed to happen. Maybe the same thing that you're describing.
Another thing you can try is you get a friend, and you give him a baseball bat, and you have him whack you on top of the head really, really hard. It's very interesting. I guarantee it.
See stars, though.
Try it and see.
So the other day, some scientist died 3 days before he was going to get the Nobel Prize. And he didn't know he was going to get it even. And they debated whether to give it to him or not, because they're supposed to only give it to live people. But they decided to give it to him anyway. There's kind of a happy ending to that story.
Cleared him live for the purposes of
receiving the prize, I guess.
The Nobel Prize can resurrect people.
Yeah.
Nice.
They decided to give it to, when they consider who to give it to, they consider without the knowledge of his death. That's why they said that's why it's valid, because
They hadn't known that he died. Yeah.
Anyway, all of this is basically silliness. The fundamental point that I'm trying to make for your consideration is that our experience is other than we usually take it. And noticing this otherness can be hugely advantageous, can be transformative, can be empowering, can be liberating. And you don't need to look anywhere other than in just the ordinary experience that you have, but just try looking at it as if it wasn't ordinary. Try looking at it as if you didn't already know what it was, and then maybe you can notice the ways in which it is different than you used to thinking it. And normalcy turns out to be a fantasy. Normalcy turns out to be a fiction. And in actual fact, what is happening here is completely and extremely and radically beyond any idea of human normalcy. And this is plain to see if you take the effort and have the wherewithal to investigate. Oh, by the way, I don't know if you've noticed, but we have hot chocolate tonight as well as chai, which is a slightly unusual state of affairs, so please avail yourself of that if you like chocolate. It's all part of the service. Listen to that music, the way it appears and vanishes. Every note, as soon as it hits it, it's just gone forever and moves on to the next. It's very strange.
Peter, I noticed that those kind of situations where what you see that isn't normal takes work. I mean, it takes a kind of, unless it just happens on its own, it seems like there's a kind of normalcy that is part of this push that just pushes also.
Well, we have an addiction to dullness, to normalcy. We create a condition of ignorance in this, not in the sense of stupidity so much as in the sense of ignoring. We actively ignore all the dynamism of our experience, and we create normalcy, we create stability, we create everything's okay, everything's just sitting here, it's just another, we sort of we dumb everything down just routinely as a normal mode of being. And we typically find ourselves just in the habit of this just from a lifetime of being a human being. And so it can seem to take effort to try and overcome that, to try and counter that, because that is a very active habit that we do in real time. We're constantly doing it. Every instant we're sort of, pulling everything together, holding it down, dumbing it down, stabilizing it, solidifying it. And so we have to counteract this own habitual tendency that we have inside ourselves, and find a way beyond it, find a way out of it. And so, that can seem like effort.
It seems as if there has to be a kind of remembering.
We can qualify it in all different sorts of ways, and you'll find your own tricks. It can be remembering, it can be sidestepping it can be spacing out, it can be all different kinds of ways, and everyone finds their own kinds of tricks who stumbles onto this. Some people do it formally, where they do periods of meditation every day, these sorts of things, all of which is an attempt to do exactly this same thing, to get out of the normal mindset of me being me in my life, and this is just Berkeley, and what do I got to do tomorrow, and what's for lunch, and all this kind of stuff, which feels very sort of mundane and dull and matter of fact and boring, right? Been there, done that. And to get outside of that sort of a mindset, it can require some tricks, can require some effort or some luck or some startlement or some excitement or this kinds of attempts like meditation, where you're trying to deliberately do that. But meditation can become its own kind of dullness. Anything that's habitual can become its own kind of dullness. The trick is to let yourself go into spontaneity. And of course it's a little harder to contrive spontaneity. It's hard to get a routine to build up spontaneity. You can take up the pattern of yelling. Ah! See, that was good. Ah! Wasn't that good? Spontaneous. All of a sudden, whoa! What happened? Every now and then, it's like cultivated a little bit of Tourette's syndrome. Every now and then, just fuck, fuck. Where's normalcy then? It's like. There's all kinds of tricks.
Well, you mentioned spacing out.
Spacing out's a really good one. Daydreaming, letting yourself.
But that seems part of the normalcy of.
Well, it might if you're defining spacing out as in terms of normalcy, like I spaced out from normalcy, it's fine. But don't define spacing out. Just do it and then see where you are. Think of spacing out as like hyperdimensional travel, going to a whole other alternate reality. You don't know what it is. All you know is that, wow, where was I? Where did I go? What just happened?
Right. You don't really know until you know that you have.
Yeah.
And then at that point, then...
Well, when you get back to normalcy, then you know you spaced out. Then you're back in dullness. But when you're spacing out, it's not normal or dull. If you're doing a good job of it. If you aren't doing a good job of it, you need to cultivate your spacing out. Become a better space cadet.
Well, let me try to nibble around the edges of your talk here. First of all, it occurred to me that this teacher in IMS kept saying, if you wake up, it's an accident. But Dharma talks and meditation help the accident out a little bit. And kept saying it's so simple. It's so simple. I'm saying it is. But so when you realize who you are, could you look up at that light and realize you're part of that light and you're part of the oxygen in this room and things of that nature?
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, was that a question?
Yeah, that was a question, and you gave it the affirmative answer?
Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, if that was a question, then that was an affirmative answer.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's more than that. It's not just you look at the light and realize I am the light. I realize that the light isn't the light and I'm not me. It's something else.
Say it again.
It's not that I look up at the light and I realize I am the light.
Mm-hmm.
That certainly happens, but I also realize that the light is not a light and me is not me. It's something else. And you can know what that something is and there's no words for it.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that's already the case. And the only thing that keeps us from noticing that is we call that a light and we call me. Stop calling that a light, stop calling me, and then what's happening here? Here, I'll give you an example. Okay, this isn't the Hillside Club. We're not human beings. This is not space. This is not time. This is not the universe. Where are you? It's just names, it's just words, it's just labels.
Mm.
And outside those labels is reality. Of course, reality is inside the labels too, but it's less obvious because it's confused by all the labels. Reality is what's already always happening, and you are that reality. And the only thing that keeps that from being obvious is all these damn labels and definitions that we believe. We think the light is the light. We think this is Berkeley. We think this is the Hillside Club. We think we are human beings.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not true. It's just simply not true. None of that is true. That is not a light. There's no such thing as a light. What that is cannot be said. What you are cannot be said. It's a simple fact. That's not like a big anything. It's just a simple statement of fact. We tie ourselves into smallness with our cleverness in supposedly in pretending we know what's going on. But we're the losers.
It sounds as if, like, we humanity or whatever, made some gigantic wrong turn to get to this way of looking at the world. And would you?
No, it's not wrong looking at it that way. it's a fine way to look at the world. It's just provisional. And the mistake we make is thinking it's not provisional, thinking it's absolute.
Oh, okay. Oh.
It's a useful way. It's useful to look at things that way. We look at things that way, and it enables us to build rocket ships and build bombs and have political parties and do all the wonderful things that we humans like to do. But it's not. It's just a game, and all these labels is the game board. It's the prerequisite. It's the rules of the game that enable us to play the game. So it's all fine as far as it goes. If you want to play the game, you need to have all these prerequisites, all these labels and stuff. But it's not absolutely true. And that's, if we forget it's not absolutely true, then you think the game is all that there is. And then you think, oh God, I'm stuck in Monopoly. I hope to God I pass go and collect $200, you know. But you aren't stuck in Monopoly. Monopoly is just a game. You can get up and leave the game board. It's not real. And likewise, all these labels, all of these definitions of the human situation and the human world is all made up. It's all conceptual. It's all manufactured, and it's not true. It's just a game. You know, if this was Berkeley, and if we were people, and if this was space and time, then we could do all these wonderful things that we humans like to do. But what if but in actuality, what if it's not? Then what do we do? Well, you can do a whole different bunch of things, perhaps.
It seems like those different things are also kind of game-like, though, too, are they not?
Maybe.
Yeah. Well, like you said, that you talked about walking away from this game. It seems that's pretty difficult to do, it seems like.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe yes, maybe no. It's only difficult if it is.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know till you try, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You ever been at one of those parties and there's a few friends sitting around a room and you're drinking or smoking or whatever, and it's getting to be the wee hours, and you say, God, I really should be going. And then you sit around, you're sitting, and another guy says, yeah, you know, God, I really should be going. You just keep sitting around and keep sitting around and say, God, I should get out of here. You keep sitting around, you keep sitting around. Well, maybe not. I mean, the main thing that prevents us from getting up and leaving is there's very little social support. Everyone you know is telling you to stay here and play the game. You'd be nuts if you got up and left. You'd be crazy. You'd become a street person. You'd be nuts. You'd be locked up. I mean, what about money? You know, what about friends? What about, you know, blah, blah, blah. There's no support for this. There's no support system unless you, like, become a Buddhist or a Hare Krishna or something, and then there's a support system, but you've just joined another game. So you haven't actually left the game. You've just hopped over to another game, and they're not going to let you leave that game very lightly either. There's not much support for just leaving every game. You know, you'll get that here, but not many other places.
Peter, earlier we were talking about spacing out and then coming back, and the coming back always seems like it is more conscious than spacing out. It seems as if it is a whole different level of experience.
Okay.
As if there's more of a sense of experience. I know it's all experience, but it seems like there's more a sense of...
What if it's not more, it's just different?
Well...
Is there more... When you go to sleep at night and you're in deep sleep and then you wake up, is there more anything when you wake up than when you were asleep? What if it's not more? What if it's just different? What if it's really different, but not more?
That's a real hard one to get to level out, because...
Is it?
Well, Yeah, for me, I mean,
Okay.
it seems as if that is self, and that it
What seems like what is self?
It's more of a sense of consciousness.
So you're less yourself when you're asleep? Who are you?
Yeah.
Who are you? Someone else? Did the evil aliens possess you and float you out into their spaceship to do anal probes or something? or whatever. Sorry.
I hope so. So this
Maybe
is
that's you too. It's just a
yes.
different you that you're not used to calling you. Maybe it's your idea of you that's small, and you have this waking self of you that maybe you're a waking chauvinist. Maybe you think, wakers rule.
Yeah.
Yeah, waking, yeah. Waking state, rah, rah, rah. Give me a W. Maybe it's arbitrary. Maybe you're more you when you're asleep than when you're awake. What would that be like? I mean, just consider it as a possibility in the abstract. How can you know that's not true?
So that would mean that what is considered the self, that seems familiar, is a creation that it's not necessarily accurate.
For sure. That's the point. That's the point. What we think things are, what we think we are, is not necessarily accurate. That's exactly what I'm suggesting. Look at your experience and assume that maybe you got it wrong. Maybe you don't have it right. Maybe what you think anything is, including yourself, is not accurate. You don't need to just throw it out and say it's not accurate. Just consider the possibility. Maybe it's not. Then what? What would that be like? What were the alternatives? What if deep sleep was more me and waking was less me? I'm not saying it is, but what if it was? I mean, it sort of turns things around, doesn't it? It sort of suggests a whole different approach to things.
So that going back to that familiar aliveness that seems like self is part of the unreality.
No. There's in deep sleep. There's an amazing aliveness. Deep sleep is not a lack of aliveness. Deep sleep, you merge in life. You let go of all of this holding and struggle, and you let go into pure life force. The body regenerates itself. The mind lets go into just vitality itself, undifferentiated. It's like settling back into the hot tub of the life force. That's why going to sleep feels so good. So you're not losing the life force. You're not losing the sizzle. You're not losing the force. On the contrary, you're merging in it undifferentiatedly. And here's an experiment. You can do that in the waking state. Let go of all labels. Let go of everything. Just let everything go. And all of a sudden, you're like an amoeba and the life force can just flow any which way because it's not being blocked and contained by all these labels that act like little walls that try and slice it up and slice it and dice it and block it and compartmentalize it. It's easy to do. You can just do it with auto-suggestion. Just all of a sudden, all labels are gone. Nothing is anything. Magic. And what's that feel like? It's like, It's kind of fun. It's kind of yummy. And you can bring the labels back. Poof! I'm Peter and you're Irma and this is the Hillside Club and this is Berkeley and the whole world's back, Everything's back where it belongs.
So that aliveness is just different then. It's just
it has many, many, many modes. And every mode is its mode. It's never more or less. There's never more or less life.
They're all good.
Sure. Just different. Just different. And they're all ultimately the same thing. They're all ultimately this energy. Deep sleep is this energy just as much as wakefulness is this energy. Relaxation is this energy just as much as being all torqued up and neurotic and worried is this energy. It has infinite modes, right? Well, I mean, it has to be. What else would all these conditions be made of? What would they be made of? How could they show up in your experience if they weren't made of life force? What would they be made of? Is there something else lying around for them to be made of? Like to just go get some old styrofoam packing materials and let's make experience out of that? It's all made out of this life force.
Been thinking about what engages, my interest a lot throughout a day. It seems like there's this idea that I can add something to myself from the world. Mm-hmm. That it's possible for me to or the underlying idea, like behind desire, I think, for me is that I can supplement myself, add to myself with something. It never works. It never happens. I never get any better. But it seems like that's an underlying idea that isn't broken somehow, no matter how many failures happen. It's weird. And then I think, can you really add anything to yourself? Like, is that even possible? Because you wouldn't, if there is anything that's not me, I wouldn't be able to interact with it anyway. I wouldn't have any knowledge of it. How could it benefit me? How could it integrate to me if it's not already me? I don't know. It's
a good question. And I think a lot of this kind of desire to get something, desire to augment, desire to solve, to increase ourselves, to perfect ourselves, to grow, is based on a notion that we are somehow incomplete, that we are somehow lacking, that we're needy, we need something. There's something not here that if we just go find just the right thing, then we'll get it, And I think that that's usually a vague kind of feeling, and I think if we look really closely at that, it's kind of hard to verify. Like, am I not whole? What's lacking? And the other side of that coin is what's here. I mean, can I even catalog myself to take an inventory of what is here, what I am? When I look at that question, it gets very amorphous and defined and mysterious, and I can't even really say what I am, what I have, so how can I say what I'm lacking? And I think the whole thing sort of ends up into a kind of a kind of a neurotic faith, a faith of, oh, I must be lacking something, there must be something missing. So
it is neurotic. Yes.
Yeah. So let me go out. So maybe if I just keep trying this and trying that, and maybe that'll like do the trick, But again, the notion that maybe it's something that'll do the trick is based on the idea that there's some trick that needs to be done, and that's an interesting question to look at. Like, what's really missing? How can I even tell what's missing? Is anything missing? What does missing mean? Is things not happening? Is my life not ongoing? What's it supposed to be that it's not? And what is it? Let alone, how can I tell what it's not if I can't tell what it is? What's my life? Is it lacking? Is it broken? Is it fixed? Are those questions even answerable? Is it just too weird to even get a handle on? I think it's a very interesting issue to look at, and I think ultimately it defeats itself when we see that we can't really pin down, we can't really get a handle, we can't really answer any of these questions definitively. We can't find that we're really lacking anything. There is this sort of urge to engage, to do things, and there's it's easy to interpret that as, oh, I must be trying to get something, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's just in my nature to do things. Maybe I'm not really trying to get anything. Maybe it's just like it's in the sun's nature to shine. Maybe it's in my nature to go out and do stupid things, But it's an interesting question.
I just wonder if it's even possible to, stick something else onto me that would add something to me. I don't think that's, I don't think that that's possible. I think that we can't. It doesn't seem possible. It doesn't seem like we, like we wouldn't know it. The only thing we know is what we are. Mm-hmm. That's the only thing I can know. I must already be it. Anything I know, I must already be.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Mm-hmm. And when we try and get a handle on what we are, the only real place we can look is our experience. What am I? Well, ultimately, I am my experience. And as you say, anything that I can get from my experience is already my experience. And if I am my experience, I'm not a small piece of my experience. I'm not just my body. I'm not just some little personality. I'm my experience.
And I don't interact with one part. Doesn't interact with the other part. It is both parts.
Yeah, it's just here. It's just here. It's just this field of experience. Like a dream that just shows up and seems to have all these different elements that morph and flow and change and come and go. But is anything really gained or lost? It's just sort of this endless shape shifting or something. It's fascinating.
That's why the word experience, I think, is a little misleading for me. That I can't really experience. I don't really experience anything. I am, the other thing that think I'm experiencing. So it's not like me experiencing that.
Well, when he was talking, the voice of Alan Watts floated up, and he said, "There's nothing you can or can't do." Can you fit this into what we've been talking about? Yeah? Because there's nothing you can or can't do because there is no you.
Well, there is no you, and what does exactly does doing mean? What exactly is doing? You can say that. You can say that experience ongoingly occurs, and it has all sorts of diversifications and different qualities that are presenting themselves on a dynamic basis, which we usually call actions or events or circumstances. But in actuality, as far as we know, it's just a field of constantly changing experience. And is that something being done? Is that something not being done? And are you doing your experiencing? Your experience, even if you try not to do anything, your experience doesn't stop. Yeah. And when you do something, it just takes place within your experience, no more or less than when you think you're not doing anything. So it's it turns out to be, again, something where the actual condition is vastly other than the simplistic way we're used to thinking of it.
Yeah. Well, how about this one? If somebody is in a motorcycle race, could you say that the whole universe is involved in the race?
Of course.
So that's why.
Because a motorcycle race is just a word, it's just a description. The universe doesn't stop. I can say we're having a conversation, but the lights keep moving, the lights keep shining. Everyone else around here their heart's beating and they're breathing. That's a part of it. Just because I'm using the description, we're having a conversation, doesn't make everything else stop, doesn't make everything else go away, doesn't make everything else not here, and everything else is just as here as this conversation is here. So spin doctoring it as a conversation is just designating a piece of the universe, but the whole rest of the universe is still included, is still here. And the same with a motorcycle race, same with anything. Because you can't take the motorcycle race and lift it out of the universe and hold it over here. It's not a separate thing. The universe comes with. It's in the universe, and it's not separate. You can't find a line. There's no division between the motorcycle race and the rest of the universe. It's not like there's a seam, or a line, or a wall, or a moat, or a little vacuum or something, right? It's continuous. So where does the motorcycle race end and the universe begin? It's all spin doctoring. It's like the word here. Okay, this is here. Okay, fine. Where does here stop? Where does there begin? Well, anywhere you want. You make it up. It's all just spin doctoring. There's no, here is everything, right? It's not like there's a point where here stops. Are those windows here? Yeah. Is the tree outside the window here? Yeah. If I could see the moon, is the moon here? Yeah.
Well, let me ask you another question. I sent a bunch of postcards out from Sitka, Alaska, and two people phoned me up, and the day I got back and said thanks for sending. I didn't know what Sitka looked like. My grandfather grew up in Sitka, and another woman called me and she said thanks for sending the card. My grandmother grew up in Sitka, and not only that, they both ended up in Arizona. Now, is this just a coincidence or what?
What isn't?
Yeah.
What isn't a coincidence?
I don't know.
I mean, here we all are. We happen to be in Berkeley on this same evening. Is that a coincidence? Well, sure. Obama happens to be president. What a coincidence. Coincidence just means happening at the same time, and obviously everything's happening at the same time. So, We've got about 2 more minutes, so if anything hasn't been brought up that's been burning a hole in the back of your mind, on the tip of your tongue, you would like to have it said now, please feel free. Is there an experiment?
I'd like to get the last question in.
Well done.
I've been finding myself trying to understand suffering in the world and what I see in situations and people. And my question is there any meaning in that?
Yes. First of all, suffering is not objective. Suffering is always subjective. It's always someone who suffers. And if there's lots of people, there's lots of someones who are suffering, but it happens individually for each individual. And suffering as an individual matter is a symptom of misunderstanding. It's a symptom of thinking things could or should be other than they are, and also of thinking that you know what things are like, or else you can't assess that they should be other. So ultimately, suffering is a symptom of misunderstanding. It's not malicious, obviously. It's not like people want to be misunderstanding, but it's an aspect of their maturing, of their spiritual maturing, that they go through a period of misunderstanding, and then eventually they will come to a deeper understanding that their misunderstanding will ultimately take them to. So suffering leads to understanding.
So it's just a point in their path towards reality.
Sure. Yeah, it's a mode of engaging with their experience, and it's an immature mode. Again, not as a value judgment or as a way of saying it shouldn't be like that, but it simply means that they are engaging with their experience with a certain degree of misunderstanding, and that misinterpretation generates a sense of suffering.
It's interesting how I feel a connection sometimes with people who are suffering. Otherwise, I wouldn't understand it as suffering or see it as suffering. And so it's interesting how there's some connection there, which, whatever meaning that has.
Yeah, it can be a lot of different things. It could be that you are resonating, you're projecting that their suffering maybe like some suffering that you have experienced, and you're relating to your own suffering through their suffering, or, there's a lot of different sort of modes that could be. But ultimately, suffering is individual. It has to be someone who suffers.
Thank you.
It's about quitting time, so thank you all very much for coming. I'll be here in 2 weeks, and have a lovely the rest of your life.